Hello, everybody. Gbenga Olatunji here. So today we shall be looking at different approaches to corporate governance, and we shall be looking at the rule-based and principle-based approaches. And it promises to be exciting, educational, informative, and it's a live recording. So please don't be distracted sometime with some activity that may be going on and laughter and the like. But it's a video that you are going to enjoy. As we are proceeding, please click the subscription button so that we can build a community together. Like us, subscribe to us, click the notification button so that you can continue to receive alert anytime we release new videos. So let us go into the class right away.
Continue. Different approaches to corporate governance. And anybody that is offering audits on this particular topic, because the same approach, especially for AAA, advanced audits, we are going to treat now. So basically, two approaches when we are talking about corporate governance or regulatory generally, any form of regulatory. It's either is principle based or is rule based. And those are the two that we'll be examining. Is either a regulation is principle based or is rule based. And when we say something is rule based, we are simply talking about highlighting the do's and the do nots. The do's and the don'ts. That is rule. So, and one major disadvantage of a rule or rules are it stimulates the initiative of practitioners. It did not allow us to express our initiative, our creativity as professionals, as practitioners. It's straight jacketed. But when we are talking about principle-based approach maybe to corporate governance as we are studying here now or as on regulatory environments. We are talking about not giving rules, the do's or the don'ts, but enlightening ourselves why we should do what we should do. Like in accounting practice or accountant's code of ethics is principle based and not rule based. So we see we have, I want to know whether we're on the same page or we have elements of audits in us. Can we mention the 5 elements of professional ethics? Yes. Okay. Okay. Huh? Professional behavior. She wants to formulate. She's a regulator. She's a regulator. Okay. 3, 4. Technique. I thought somebody mentioned confidentiality. No. Okay, confidentiality. Okay, so it's technicality that has not been mentioned. So we will see in all those 5 we've mentioned, there's nothing like a rule there, but there are principles. That is, we should try as much as possible to be independent, to be objective, to be confidential, to acquire professional competence, to obtain due care, or to care about our businesses and the like. So, for principle based, we are enlightened why we should do what we need to do, but we are not given what we must strictly do. So it's you now that we know that I must be objective in whatsoever I'm doing. But for rule will be telling us you need to be objective in class. I read from my notes now. We've sent notes where you are out. So you are that smart. You are very sharp. Okay. So, but that means you should read those people that put it there. Okay. You don't know that women are smarter. They are smarter than us. I'm just telling you. If you do like this, everyone, they are smarter. Kudos. The main reason for codes of good corporate governance is to help and protect investors. We should not forget that. We are to highlight some reason we should have code of conduct is to protect investors or public interest. Investors need reliable information about their companies or where they want to invest to decide whether to invest in the shares or to sell it out. Investors need to be protected against unethical or dishonest behavior, which management can do or the directors of the organization. So different countries have different code of conduct and different approaches. And for Nigeria, because the way our bank addressed it is like international subject. For Nigeria, we are principle-oriented companies. And also we are company, principle-oriented nation. We are principle-oriented nation. So our code is based on principles, not on rules. Countries have developed corporate governance codes and practices because they want to attract and keep investment capital. And which type of investment are we talking about here? FDI, foreign direct investment. This is because investment capital helps the country's economy to develop and is company to prosper. Pressure for better corporate governance has come mainly from two sides or reasons. One, the collapse of the world's stock market, especially that of US, 2001, another happened 2008, one nearly happened like 3 years ago. Two, pressure comes from institutional investors. And when we started this morning, we touched on who institutional investors are. And we gave the example of our PFAs, our pension fund administrators. They are good example of institutional investors in our local HMO. HMO, no. That's the health management organization. Their own is to pull little resources together because when somebody is sick, somebody else is strong. And they make money from it. It's just like insurance. We insure for accidents, but we know that all Nigerians will not have accidents. So they take money from people, large number of people that will not have accidents, to cater for little accident that will come, and they make their own margin. So they are not investors. If they invest, they are into private investment. But PFAs, yes, is Commonwealth investment because your pension, my pension, till as we continue to work before we can obtain it, are with them. And those monies, they are using it and making money, paying their staff, and giving us little returns. So they are institutional investors. There are some organizations too that they are strictly for investments. They are not PFAs, but they are institutional investors. I want to remember one notable international company that all they do is to fund organizations or to buy business over. Yes, they are institutional investors. The International Code of Corporate International Corporate Governance Network, ICGN. So that is one body that oversees corporate corporate governance. And see, all these bodies are actually voluntary organizations. It's an entity formed in 1995 whose members consist of major institutional investors, companies, bankers, and other interest groups. And please, I think in the area now we need to pay attention for the purpose of our exams is different body of knowledge now, corporate governance organization, and their functions. You see that for ICGN, the major on their membership is companies, banks, and investment organizations. We are going to come across another one, which is going to be strictly business owners and the like. We should note the function in which different agencies or body of corporate governance regulators are made up of their membership. But it's not the same, and their strengths too are not the same. So like ICGN that we are talking about now, they are basically for institutional investors, companies, bankers. Because the governance of a corporation is one of the key factors that investors consider when they decide where to allocate their own fund. So these people approach governance from investors' perspective. Don't forget that we have a lot of stakeholders that corporate governance must take care of. So these people now, they are, okay, what I say we should note now is we have like three bodies. ICGN is one. We are going to come to other. What I'm saying is ICGN. Yes, yes. So ICGN now, ICGN members considering making investment decision also consider the market's governance program. That is, how is market environment in a country? How does it operate? Ethics and company performance. Of course, we will agree that an organization hardly will be able to grow above its ethics. Do we agree? Because our ethics is fundamental to our operations and who we are going to attract as investors, as even customers. Some people, because of our ethics, will not be our customer and will not invest into us. Let's take for example, Emir, like Emir of Kano, we know that they are custodian of Islamic faith. They will not for any reason have investment in UAs. Do we understand? They will not. Why? Because as well of their leadership as to that faith, it is against our policy. You understand? They will not want. So our ethics form is the basis for our performance. That's where I'm going. There are some customers we not have by reason of our ethics. And there are some that we will attract by reason of our ethics. Like an Islamic cleric may not be your director. In a banking industry that is lending loan with interest because it's part of core Islamic faith. That's why we have Islamic banking with that is loan without interest that Islam advocates. So if you have such an organization and that kind of ethics, definitely there are some segments of the nation or the business world that you will attract, and some you will not attract by reason of what you stand for. Corporate governance code and different model of corporate ownership. Corporate governance, especially in the broader language, you cannot eliminate the term stock exchange. because that is where the investors congregate. It's the market where we buy and sell shares. How many of us are shareholders? How many of us have shares? How many of us have shares? Can you trade in the spirit? One, two. How many of us buy yam? Yam. YAM. Especially the ladies. I'm just joking. What I'm saying is we buy commodities, but we could not buy those ones that are artificial. We do not have shares. So we should try as much as possible as accountant to buy shares. Yes, they may not. They may not. There are reasons, so many reasons to buy shares. Yes, but trading them is a bit difficult because few Nigerian, what's it called, actually have platform for that. Do you know of one that has international platform for that? Yes, international platform. You can buy in your house, you can buy as you are talking now, you can sell. Maybe you will connect me. Maybe you will connect insurance. Looking at it now, especially if you are buying for children or children education, but you must ensure one thing that the organization will not collapse. Once they have good long-term prospects, not minding whether they are profitable now or not, and you buy it for the future, there's no issues. There's no issues. But if we buy it for the future, but the company is dead, and we've experienced it in Nigeria. Okay, so that is corporate governance. We cannot relations on. I'm reading from my notes. On corporate governance issues are also mainly applied to top market companies. So there's no how we really want to deal with corporate governance without talking about multinationals and the like. Like when we started with, one of the reasons we can minimize corporate governance issue is to go solo, right? Sole proprietorship and the like. So when we are talking about corporate governance, we cannot eliminate talking about multinationals and stock markets. It's almost impossible. Other companies can normally decide what system of corporate governance they want, and they are not required to comply. But for stock exchange, compliance is key. If not, they will be delisted. Even in Nigeria, they delist if organization is not complying. So, rule-based approach now. A rule-based approach to corporate governance is based on the view that companies must be required by law. See now, law is do and don't. Must be required by law to comply with established principles of good corporate governance. Rules might apply only to some types of companies, such as major stock market companies. However, for the companies to which they apply, that is the rules must be obeyed and without exception or few exceptions if there is going to be any. So rules are so straight-jacketed and must be complied with. There is no give me a reason why you are not complying. It's either you are complying or you'll be delisted. So rules have their backup on laws. Advantages of rules. Companies do not have choice. No choice. It's either do or don't. And there is repercussion for do's and repercussion consequences for don't. All companies are required to meet same minimum standard, and that is another issue. And just as we know, the composition of organizations vary from one organization to the other. But now giving them and putting them under the same rule is almost impossible because different conditions, they are experiencing different conditions. So they are to adhere to the same rule is almost unreasonable. Investors' confidence in the stock market might be improved if the stock market companies are required to comply with recognized corporate governance rule. So that is an advantage. Disadvantage, the same rules might not be suitable. Okay, I've said that there are some aspects of corporate governance that cannot be regulated easily, such as negotiating directors' remuneration. We cannot put rules for that because your director will be different from my director, and they have different understanding, different exposure, different perspective, coming from different backgrounds. So how are you going to, if you are a director, you must hand this, you must. There are some aspects of corporate governance that cannot be regulated easily, such as directors' remuneration, deciding the most suitable range of skill that they must have, assessing the performance of the board and its directors. This is difficult to achieve. So you now see I'm coming home by adopting our path and putting our Nigerian experience. Page 3. Corporate governance rules, practical application. Example of statutory rules in the UK and Nigeria are as follows. We will see that with some exceptions, mainly for small organizations or medium-sized organizations, companies are required to submit a director's report. And even in Nigeria, we have it too. And if their salary scale range, when we are auditing, we must work on it and submit it. It's part of what we want to see and highlighted in the financials. And it's part of good corporate governance because then we can easily look at it and compare it to what the organization actually made, the profit. Let's say the total package of all the directors, 500 million in a year, and the organization made 500 million, the organization made, let's say, 1 billion. But if the organization made 10 million as profit, but meanwhile, the total package of directors alone, not other staff, is 5% of that. So we could imagine what we have. So it's when we highlight it based on corporate governance ethics, it helps to compare and understand and interpret the financials better. The financial statement should be audited. It's part of good corporate governance. Even in Nigeria, must be audited. But in Nigerian case now, is Kama let us know that the PLCs have statutory audit, while other organizations, the small and medium scale, have private audits. That is, they can decide whether they want to audit or not. Quoted companies must prepare a director's remuneration report. Okay, yes, in Nigeria it's applicable. The UK Company Act, just like Nigerian Kama, I want to believe we know that Kama now has moved from Kama 1999 to Kama 2020. So that was why I put it there. Even Kama 2020 specifies duty of directors or their duty they hold to the organization. Just like the traveling to US. Basically, what draws the whole world attention to corporate governance begins around 2000, 2001 when ENRON and WORLDCOM fell, when they collapsed, and they collapsed because of corporate governance. That is, directors follow their self-interests as against corporate interests, making shareholders to have consequence while they've enjoyed their own remuneration package and other things. A company is a company in serious financial difficulty was dominated by chief executives. Like when I asked us who and who are the most powerful among the board, and I think she told us the chairman and the CEO. So companies are dominated by strong, powerful chief executive and a small number of senior executives. And those senior members, they are just yes people. Yes, sir, yes, sir. They are not, they are, but what we did was wrong or not. So they just follow to do wrong. Financial reporting was misleading. So we auditors and practitioner accountants, we have hand in it. Because we enhanced it, we endorsed it, we signed it off, and we expressed free and fair opinion. And that was the end of Otto Anderson, because Otto Anderson actually audited errors. Financial controls were weak and inadequate to prevent the misleading reporting and to prevent fraudulent activity by some executives. Like I always say, we two types of fraud that we have. We have fraudulent financial reporting and misappropriation. These are the two frauds that we have. But for fraudulent financial reporting to happen, organization management must have hand in them. But misappropriation can happen at any level. Anybody can misappropriate. Misappropriation simply means we use what was meant for another purpose for what was not intended. And it will happen. I usually cite that example. When we use that stapler, that staple pin just one out of that 1,000 to staple our CV, it's misappropriation. It's fraud. But it's so simple. But it's fraud. I just explained. I just explained. The staple pin was meant for the official use, right? But you just want to clip that 2 pages CV. So you use that one pin. The whole pin is maybe 150. It has like 1,000 pins in it. You just use one. But that one actually is misappropriated. So on the general level, misappropriation can take place. But for financial reporting, fraudulent financial reporting to take place, practitioners must have directors, management must have hand in it because there are a lot of controls before financials will be produced. Somebody needs to approve something and things like that, and we know that it's erroneous or it does not even exist. Then we use it to form a financial statement. So financial statement fraud cannot happen if we did not collaborate or make it happen. But misappropriation can happen at any level. Do we understand? That is audit experience. I just bring it into our discussion because it's highly relevant here now. The financial controls are weak and inadequate to prevent misleading reporting. That was how we get there. So when we are talking about Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, which was the aftermath study of the fall of ENRON and WorldCom that fell in 2000 and 2001. So Sarbanes-Oxley actually, there are two people, and those are the surnames of the leaders that understudy what has happened. Why did ENRON fell and why did WorldCom fell? And they came out with this act. Then they named the act after them. So when we see Sarbanes-Oxley Act, it actually means the name of two people that led the team. The main governance task aspect of Sarbanes-Oxley, of course, it's a legislation. It's all about corporate accountability. That directors should be accountable, management should be accountable. Sarbanes-Oxley Act was a very long act. In fact, there are some aspects even till now, based on my findings, that US has not implemented some aspects. Even the one they implemented is still causing happen because there are lots of documentations that are required for financials to go out or to go live. And because of this, it's not attracting FDI into USA, that is foreign direct investments. Investors are not coming in as they ought to come in into US because of Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Because compliance with it is so strict. Some key provisions of the Act: CEO and CFO certification. And we'll see that even in Nigeria, we've adopted it. FRC, Federal Reporting Council, we've adopted it. Your organization, you will notice that your chairman or CEO must sign that account. Then the head of account must sign the account. So it was actually coming from the background of Sarbanes-Oxley Act for corporate governance that let these leaders take responsibility. If you are the accountant and you prepare the account, it's not good enough that you prepare it, take ownership of it. It's not about God said that you create the budget. You to sign it off. And by signing it off, you cannot come back later and tell the world that God said that you put the figure. You sign it off, you take ownership as chartered accountant. Assessment. Sorry, the thing just went. Sarbanes-Oxley actually strengthened especially the PLC aspect of Nigerian regulation, that we should have audit committee, internal control, because it's the responsibility of audit committee to ensure that we have internal control and oversees the management when it comes to internal control. Are we still together? Are we still together? We are getting tired, Rabi. 10:30. And I want us to finish this. Eh? It's as if I'm talking theory, Abby, or I'm moving too fast. Let me help you back. You know, CSME is all about talk. I don't want to lose you. So the aspect of our reporting in Nigeria that says, okay, audit committee must exist to help the board of directors for internal control and the like actually has the background of Sarbanes-Oxley units. Assessment of internal controls. The section 404 is possibly the most notorious part of Sarbanes-Oxley Act. The Act requires SEC, that is Security Exchange Commission, to establish rules that require companies to include an internal control report in annual financial statement. I think that aspect is not adopted in Nigeria. And this aspect is saying that if just one singular weakness, or if there is more than one singular weakness flagged by the internal auditor or the internal control personnel, that report, that audited account cannot flag. When do we audit? Okay. Yes. So now you will agree that information is not public. It's not public. That's what I meant that in Nigeria. When we say, but to be auditor, PwC audited, and why did they knew because that document has been given to the management. We call it management control report, or in our pack, it's called management letter. No, not management letter of weakness. It's called letter of weakness. So that letter of weakness comprises of everything that is observed in the course of audit, but it's for management's consumption. That is why they say that this is the most toughest part of Sarbanes-Oxley Act, because now Sarbanes-Oxley was telling us that okay, make that private document public. Say, yes. So they said make that, there are a lot of all those weaknesses that eventually years continue to go by, they will not do anything. Until that weakness will bring the organization down, everybody will start talking. Meanwhile, auditors are staying in 5, 6, 7 years. So now, the act of God, the governance act is saying, make it public. And in no wise will your audited account be signed and be made public if weakness in your MCR, management control report, is more than one. So that was why they say it's the most notorious. Section 404 is possibly the most notorious part of Sarbanes-Oxley Act. The Act requires SEC to establish rules that require companies to include an internal control report in an annual statement. This control report must state the responsibility of the management for establishing and maintaining adequate internal control system and contain an assessment of the effectiveness of internal control structure and procedure of the financial or the company for the financial report. If we continue to go down, we will see where it's expressly stated that okay, if more than one material weakness exists, a company is not allowed to conclude that its internal control system is adequate. So that report cannot go like. We now ask ourselves, how many organizations are? Yes, so it's very tough because it's almost impossible. It's like asking for perfection in this world. But that is US now for you. That is why US is not foreign direct investment destination foreign. But they already have their investment, so they do not care, unlike Nigeria. I said they have their own funding, they have their own money already. So whether they attract foreign investment or not, they are less concerned. You hear the news, the tweets from Trump. Say if we lose this current election, that's going to move out of US. People want to go into US. You want to move out. Simply because he has investment all over the world. So they have their money, but we want to attract FDI, but they do not care. So stricter measures they are putting day by day to ensure that the investors are protected. So we've been talking about the rule base now. Let's look at principle based approach to corporate governance. Like when I was introducing it, it's not about do's and don'ts. Principles are about enlightening the practitioner to take the best objective approach to his work. Principle based audit, don't mind me, it's not audit now, it's corporate, but it's in audit too. Principle-based approach to corporate governance is an alternative to a rule-based approach. It is based on the view that a single set of rules is inappropriate for every company. Circumstances and situations differ between companies, and we agree. The circumstances of the same company can change over time. That is, even the same organization, different scenarios can be created in the twinkle of an eye. This means that the most suitable corporate governance practices can differ between companies to the other. Two, the best corporate governance practices for a company might change over time as its circumstances equally change. It is therefore argued that a corporate governance code should be applied to all major companies, but this code should consist of principles and not rules. So practitioners should be given leverage to be objective, to be independent, and think about what is the best way we should do our work and govern this system, rather than do's and don'ts. So, well, unlike the, are we together? Are we together? Yeah, welcome, ma'am. I didn't have her number because I actually have her at heart because I know she always comes purposely for CSME alone. But I do not have her number. If I have her number, I will call her. Sorry. The rule base. In rule base, it's about the consequences of not obeying the rule. But for principle base, it's about comply. And if you cannot comply, explain. Explain why you are not complying so that we can reason it together. Comply or explain. I read from my notes. So you do not even have notes now. And nobody can add that to the book. Comply, state why, explain. But for that's for principle. But for rule is punishment. You'll be punished for not complying. They apply the principle in the code of corporate governance, and either the company or comply. And if they are not complying, they will explain why they are not complying. Which is more effective? Maybe we should discuss this. Rule-based or principle? And you tell us why. Okay. You must do this or get punished for it. For it. Yes, yes, yes. Explain to us. Thank you. So it's more flexible and it's more realistic. Realistic. Okay, that's one. More rule based. Okay. Based on scientific studies.
Yes, like you can give us our leverage to whatever we want, but
No, that's principle.
yes,
The rule will not give you leverage.
Yeah, I'm trying to get us. If you give us a leverage,
Please, are we together?
If you give us a leverage,